stick with it.
Morning. Morning, conference. Morning, if we can take our seats to make a start as quickly as possible, that would be appreciated. Can I welcome you back? I trust you're all feeling fresh after an early night last night and are raring to go for the debates this morning. Apologies for the slight overrun yesterday. We've rearranged our agenda this morning to ensure that we cover all the business that we need to get to. So in the interest of time, I'm going to get straight to business. First on the agenda is the report from the leader of the WLGA, RCT leader Andrew Morgan. Andrew's played a really key part in the partnership approach to government here in Wales, working with our Welsh Labour government and ministers on a regular basis to ensure that we serve the people that we represent. Andrew's been a fantastic leader of the WLGA, and he's also an inspiration on his birthday today to the younger generation of leaders that I represent. So welcome to the stage, Andrew Morgan.
I really wish Welsh Labour won't keep arranging this around my birthday. Second year. Just to say, I'm not 50, by the way, wherever Caroline Harris is. Far from it. Okay, thank you. Welcome, conference. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. Start off by saying 30 years ago, I did start my apprenticeship with the local authority, and today I'm proud to address you for the second time as the leader of the Welsh Local Government Association. I've had that role since 2019, and leader of Rhondda Cynon Council since 2014. A lot has happened in the last year since I stood here. A year ago, we were still emerging from the pandemic, and a year on, we are still dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic and the effect it's had on all of us. This time last year, Russia had just invaded Ukraine, and over the last 12 months, local authorities in Wales have worked closely with the Welsh Government in terms of providing support for those who have been seeking refuge here. Over the last 12 months, we've seen an escalating cost of living crisis. Again, working with Welsh Government, we've done our absolute best to support families across Wales. We've given out millions and millions of pounds of support, and it's important to recognise that money, or a lot of that money, has been over and above what has been consequenced down from Westminster. Welsh Government has found additional funding. I think it's important to remember the millions and millions of pounds that has been made available to local government for this. Over the last 12 months, there's been another big development. That was the local elections. And I'm pleased to say that, of course, we don't have a single Tory council run in Wales anymore. I think the people of Wales give a damning verdict on the Tories, and I really hope at the next general election they do the same again. I'd like to congratulate the entire Welsh family of Welsh Labour for the fantastic results in the local elections. Congratulations particularly to Cabinet members now in Powys and Conwy, the leadership in Denbighshire. I'd like to also particularly welcome and say congratulations to Marianne in Monmouthshire, taking control there. And can I echo what was said yesterday? I'm sure all of us will be with Marianne and her team, making sure that we do take the MP seat and hopefully the Senedd seat in that county as well. Would also like to particularly say well done to Bridgend, who are now back in majority control under Hugh David's leadership. But it's fair to say it's been a difficult 12 months. The Tories crashed the economy. There's no getting away from it. Last year has been like a year in politics we've not seen before. 3 Prime Ministers, and as somebody said yesterday, it is 3. Remember Liz Truss, the 46 days PM? Well, she was only in post for 46 days, but certainly a legacy has lived on. First of all, for those millions of people who have been impacted with their mortgages, for businesses, for the public sector, anyone who does any borrowing with the markets, and local authorities have to borrow, obviously, to invest in lots of areas such as our schools and our infrastructure. That has left a legacy for us. It has meant that there's less money available to us now because of her 46 days as PM, and we need to remember that. It's not just PMs, of course, as local authority leaders. We've had 4 chancellors to deal with, 4 different finance secretaries. We've had 4 Home Secretaries, although that does include one who was sacked and then came back then a week later, so a little bit confusing. We had 5 Secretary of States for levelling up, and again, a bit of a yo-yo in terms of people coming and going. It's hard to know who actually I'm writing to these days. In the last year, on the back of the war in Ukraine, we've seen naked profiteering of energy companies. I have to say that is having a massive and profound effect on public services. In local authorities, in my own local authority, a 300% increase in our utility costs. That is impacting on keeping our heating and lights on in our care homes, our sports centres, and all our facilities, our schools, for example. It is having a real profound impact. I have to say that, just like we've done during the pandemic, we work very closely with Welsh Government, and I would like today, again, to pay particular tribute to individuals. While we have a fantastic team where we do have a close relationship with, I would absolutely like to say thank you to Mark Drayford for the way that over recent years we've really built that relationship, particularly to Rebecca Evans as our local government finance and finance minister. I know she can't be here today, but I'd like to say particularly for the warm support we get from Rebecca in terms of any problems. They're always at the end of the phone. That's a very different relationship in Wales to what we see across the border. Often the LGA will say they find things out on Sky News. They don't have those conversations with ministers like we do in Wales. During our years of austerity, Welsh Government really have tried to support us, and it's an important fact that I just want to read out here. During 2010 to 2016, the IFS have said that in Wales, the cuts to local government were 11.5% lower than what they were in England. We've had difficult times, we've had difficult decisions to make, and certainly this year it's been worse than many other years because of inflation and all the pressures. But that support with Welsh Government has been absolutely fundamental, and I really can't stress that enough. And going forward, we need to continue that support. We need to have the support of Welsh Government. We need to work closely together because we know it's going to be tough times ahead. If we did get a UK Labour government, working with a Welsh Labour government, working with Welsh Labour councils, there is no end of things we could do if we had the financial firepower and the support, but we need those levers in Westminster to be supporting Wales, not working against Wales, and that's where we are at present. If you look at things like the green energy projects, insulating homes, all those things we could be doing on renewable energy, helping to tackle poverty, a lot of that does need the support of UK government, things within their gift. When it comes to NHS and social care, we need to be clear that the Labour Party was the people who brought the NHS forward, that we would have no NHS without the Labour Party. However, the Tories have systematically defunded it over the last 13 years, and they've also artificially inflated the figures in England. It's important to recognise in Wales that a conscious decision was taken to support social care as much as possible alongside the NHS. That certainly didn't happen in England. So when you do a comparison, you really need to look at social care funding in Wales alongside NHS spending. Conference, I'd like to thank all the council staff for what they do every day, and certainly the last few years has been incredibly difficult. But on the topic of social care, I would really particularly like to thank the fantastic social care staff we have across Wales for continuing to deliver the support for residents in one of the most challenging times we've faced, probably certainly in my lifetime. If we did get a UK Labour government working with the Senedd, then we can certainly work together on areas of deprivation, such as in my local authority, but across Wales there's lots of areas of deprivation we could be really working on. We wouldn't have the Levelling Up Fund in the way it is. It's like a lottery. So let's be clear about the Levelling Up Fund. RCT in the last round put a bid in, and we got nothing, not a penny. But the Prime Minister's constituency was lucky enough to have £19 million. So fair play to them, and they done well. But lots of places in Wales had a big fat zero. So if we were really talking about levelling up, Tory ministers would be looking to invest across the country for sure, but giving those areas that need that extra boost, extra support, not cherry picking and thinking of the next election. And also, if the Tories really supported levelling up, they could do, for example, one thing they could do, for example, they would raise housing benefits to cover the true cost, because that is a massive pressure on our communities. Or they could do the biggest thing within their power. They could stop gaslighting the entire country, and they could call a general election, and we could have a Labour government to start putting the economy at the forefront and make sure that public services are funded and not systematically defunded. I also just want to come to a close by saying I want to thank Labour leaders and colleagues for the support I have as the WLJ leader. I'd also like to thank every person who put themselves forward as a candidate in the elections. I know it's not easy. Sticking your neck out for the community, sometimes it can be quite challenging. But I'd just like to say, whether you win or lose in an election, if you think you want to put yourself forward, I would suggest you go for it. I particularly want to thank the relationship with trade unions. It can be difficult sometimes because a lot of it comes down to finance and competing demands. But having a constructive relationship with trade unions, for me, is paramount. We only do things when we work together. We only get an agreement when we sit around the table and discuss things. Lastly, local authorities deliver over 800 services. I know sometimes people will say to me, what do councils actually do? You only empty the bins and fill the potholes. Most local authorities will do over 800 services. And that goes from care funding, schools, maintain our roads, our parks, our leisure centres, play areas. We do active travel, 21st century schools. We're working with the Welsh Government to extend free school meal provision, whether it's supporting refugees, I mentioned earlier. Local authorities are the bedrock of our local communities, and that's the way we should see local government. Say to all Welsh councillors, you make a difference in our communities. I'm proud to be a Welsh Labour councillor. I will continue to support Labour councillors all I can. And I'd just like to say that thank you to everybody who's given me the support over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to all our local government colleagues, wherever in Wales you represent. Can I now call on Steve Belcher, the Chair of TULO, to deliver the report on the Trade Union Liaison Committee. Steve, welcome to the platform.
Thank you, Chair. Conference. My speech is going to be slightly shorter because I was going to do it last night, and I was going to end by reminding you of the excellent TULO fringe meeting that was 5:30 in the Harlech room upstairs. So for those of you who did manage to get to it, I hope you enjoyed it. It was, I thought, a valuable contribution from our speakers. But what I will start with, Chair and Conference, is I'm going to ask for a little bit of appreciation and thanks, because we've had a wonderful conference. The staff in this venue have looked after us. The people who've served your food, people who've served your drinks, cleaned your hotels, the hard-working council workers who gritted the roads to make sure you could get here, the train drivers who made sure that you got here safely. Can we have a round of applause for these people, please? Thanks, Conference. And we all know it's important to remember, we all know who the essential workers really are, don't we? Conference, I'm sure I don't need to remind anybody in this room, but 2022, without a shred of doubt, reminded everyone of the importance of being in a trade union. The Tories have inflicted 13 years of austerity, pay freezes, attacks on trade union rights, new anti-trade union laws, and now the repugnant minimum services bill that will effectively make industrial action unlawful. And you know what, Conference? Just like the Welsh football team, we're still here. Yma o hyd, Conference. Yma o hyd. The trade unions are still here. The thing the Tories can't understand and won't understand and absolutely don't understand is that we will never be beaten. We're sometimes bruised. We might get some would say a little punch drunk on occasions, but after every knockback, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down and continue the fight. Across all TULO affiliates, across all sectors, our members in 2022 fought back. The Tory-inspired cost of living crisis has had a catastrophic effect on our members' standard of living. It's 2023, for goodness sake, not 1923. Our members are having to decide whether they heat their home, feed their children, or buy clothes for their family. They can't do all three because they can't afford it. We've had 3 prime ministers last year. Not one of them has ever had to think of those choices. They are out of touch, out of ideas, and hopefully out of office pretty soon, Conference. This wave of industrial unrest is born out of desperation brought on by grinding poverty created by a Tory government in Westminster who quite, let's be frank, couldn't care less about the working class. Devolution has helped to absorb some of the Tories' attacks, but they've never supported devolution and done all they can over the years to subvert it, to reverse it, and to dismantle it. I wonder why. The toxic minimum services bill is a classic case in point. Instead of trying to understand why there's such industrial unrest, they simply do what they've always done. When in doubt, attack the trade unions, attack the working class, the very people who create the wealth in this country that keeps the country going. What do? They legislate time and time again to make our lives more difficult. Organised labour is an anathema to the Tories. It's not that long ago that we were called the enemy within. Remember that? It wasn't that long ago. This conference, I believe, is being screened online. So I just wondered if Rishi Sunak has sent one of his minions in front of a laptop this morning, said, keep an eye on them. We want to know what they're talking about, what they're deciding. So if there is one of his minions sitting in front of his laptop this morning, there's a message to us. You will never beat us. You will never win. Never. The conference, the trade union movement is alive and kicking and as resilient as ever and will still be here long after the Tories are just a little postscript in the history books. It's heartening to hear that the Labour leader has publicly stated that the Minimum Provisions Bill and the 2016 Trade Union Bill will be repealed by an incoming Labour government. The sooner that happens, the better. But what would be more heartening is if there was a commitment to repeal all of the anti-trade union legislation that was introduced during the 80s. And so conference special thanks to those Senate members and MPs who stood shoulder to shoulder with us on our picket lines over the last 12 months. Your solidarity will not be forgotten, comrades. Back to that minimum provisions bill conference. There's not a word in there that's designed to make our job easier. Everything is designed to make our work harder and to make it more difficult to represent our members' interests. It's an attack on democracy, it's an attack on civil rights, an attack on the trade unions, and let's be in no doubt, it's an attack on devolution. Almost every affiliated trade union has run industrial action ballots over the last 12 months conference. All of us having to comply with the voting thresholds imposed on us under the 2016 Trade Union Act. Minimum 50% turnout before any ballot decision becomes lawful. Imagine if that threshold was applied in Westminster. The place would be a lot quieter because a lot of them wouldn't be there if they applied the same rules on themselves getting elected as on trade unions. So, the 2016 bill, we want it repealed. But at the time, we argued for electronic balloting. The technology is there, the IT is there for us to do it. You know, the Tories themselves elected Liz Truss on the back of an electronic ballot. So they've refused to even think about trade unions being allowed electronic ballots. And we know why, because every time we would make that 50% threshold easily. People vote online. It's been proven over and over again. So, and they call us the dinosaurs, for goodness sake. Yeah, there's a reason they don't want us to step into the 21st century with the technology, with the balloting. Recruitment in almost all of the affiliated trade unions has increased over the last 12 months, and there's a reason for that as well, conference. More and more working people are seeing that it is only through a trade union their voices are heard and that someone is looking out for them and fighting their corner. But let's have some positive news. The affiliated trade unions also welcome the Social Partnership and Procurement Bill as it makes its legislative journey almost at the end through the Senate. We welcome the work of Hannah Blythen in steering it through the various stages. Hannah has worked closely with the trade unions throughout. This relationship is crucial as this becomes law, as some employers will be desperately looking for loopholes and ways to circumvent it. There must be rigid enforcement and consequences for those that choose to ignore it. On a separate note, before I close, Chair, I can see the lights changing there. There was a motion which didn't make the agenda paper called Celebrating Trade Unions. It's a pity it didn't make the agenda paper because we should be celebrated. You know, you know, we represent the organised work labour in this country, and we should be celebrated. I'll just close, Chair, by I'd like to thank Mary Williams from Unite, who's the Secretary of Welsh TULO, Tom Hoyles from GMB, who's our Treasurer, looking after the meagre funds that we have, and all of the affiliates who come to our meetings, debate and discuss, and, you know, help to liaise with the Labour Party and make us the great fighting organisation that we are. So, Conference, I'm not going to end by reminding you about the Fringe meeting because it's happened. I'm just going to say thanks very much for listening to me. I think it's been a brilliant conference. I think we're going to go away from here energised, take the fight to the Tories, and let's have a Labour government in Westminster, okay, that can allow our members to earn a decent wage, have some job security, and not have to rely on food banks in the 21st century to feed their families. We can do this, Conference, this time. Maybe not next year, but we are going to be in power with your support and the trade unions' help. We will get there. Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve, for ably demonstrating the great strength our party gains from the collective working that we have with our affiliated trade unions. After all, we achieve common goals that way. Thank you, Conference. The next section of this morning, I just point out there were no card votes yesterday and no ballots at this year's conference, so there's nothing for the Chief Scrutineer to report. So we can move straight into the first of the debates today to give the most time for that, which is devolution in the 21st century. And to open this debate, I believe we've got a message from a real giant of our party, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown.
Let me start by expressing my thanks to Mark and to say I believe I speak for the whole of the Labour movement across the entire United Kingdom to say we are incredibly proud of Mark Drakeford and his achievements. His leadership of Welsh Labour, his expert and sensitive handling of COVID, his lifelong commitment to social justice. Mark, you are and you continue to be an inspiration for all our party. And can I begin too at this 2023 Welsh Labour Conference by congratulating you as a party for earning 100 years of political dominance in Wales, winning every general election in Wales since 1922 and every Senate election since 1999. I can tell you, you can rightly claim to being the most successful political party in the history of democracy. I applaud your historic achievement, and let me add that you have also proved that devolution works. From creating the first Children's Commissioner, the first nationwide free school meals and free breakfasts, the first to end the physical punishment of children, the first to ban single-use plastics, the creation of the UK's first regional bank, the new treatment fund, free prescriptions for all, building 21st century schools, Flying Start, the Young Person's Guarantee, social partnership, the nurse bursary. Don't let anyone say to you that all parties are the same, that politics doesn't matter, that voting Labour can't make a difference. You have proved that voting Labour here in Wales makes all the difference. And all the time you've been upholding and discharging the socialist mission of defending and creating good jobs and attacking poverty wherever and whenever it is to be found in Wales. All these are advances only possible because of the contribution of Welsh Labour Party members. And it's because you've pioneered a new relationship between the autonomy that the Welsh people desire and the cooperation across the United Kingdom that the Welsh people and all of us need, that you have inspired the report of the Commission on the Future of the United Kingdom that Keir Starmer asked me to chair alongside Carwyn Jones and Paul Murphy. Under its recommendations, the next Labour government will achieve an aim dear to all our hearts, a demand for more than 100 years. Labour will abolish the House of Lords and replace it with an elected assembly of the nations and regions. The next Labour government will entrench in our constitution the universal right to healthcare, free of charge, the obligation to end child and pension of poverty, now placed on a statute, setting out our duties as citizens to each other, including building a sustainable environment and good jobs for all. And our Commission recommended that we should entrench the devolution settlement. So the next Labour government would ensure that no Tory government in Westminster could ever again overrule and undermine devolution at will. And the next Labour government will not only create a Council of the Nations and Regions to address matters of common interest and concern, but give new powers to the Welsh Senate across policing and justice, across the management of the economy and economic affairs and employment, including the control of the job centre network. And it is my view that just as we moved speedily in 1997 to enact devolution, these powers should be legislated in the first year of the first term of the Labour government. And that's our plan. The maximum autonomy possible combined with the maximum cooperation necessary. Now, some say we don't go far enough, but we were clear we were working in the shadows of and subject to the conclusions of the Williams-McAllister Commission that you've set up in Wales. And so instead of second guessing them with separate recommendations, which might be rightly viewed as Labour forming a form of Labour centralisation, when proposals for change should not second guess your own commission within Wales, we said that further new powers awaited and would flow from the recommendations of the Williams-McAllister Commission, which should be ready in time for inclusion in the UK manifesto at the next election. And to those who suggest we have fallen short on some issues, I say, look at the overriding principle that guides all we said, that all the powers that devolution offers Scotland can be applied to Wales when and if your party and your government desire and demand them. For the principle is clear: self-government matched by shared government, matching the autonomy Wales desires to the cooperation across the United Kingdom needed to deal with pollution, pandemics, common economic and social challenges, defence and security. Now, in recent years, an unreformed centre in Whitehall has been exposed as out of date, out of its depth, and out of touch with your needs and every local community's needs, and all too often exposed as out of control amid the misuse of power, the abuse of patronage, behaviour so unethical and unacceptable, sleaze and scandal so pervasive that millions of people, both Leave and Remain voters, still feel neglected, ignored, forgotten, and invisible to the powers that be in Whitehall and Westminster. And this often leaves people feeling treated as second-class citizens. And as Welsh Labour ministers and Welsh MPs have argued so persuasively, it's time to end the culture that allows Whitehall to tell Wales, you get what you're given, because that is corrosive of public trust. And so we know we have not just to change who makes the decisions in Westminster, but change the way decisions are made. And to ensure the right powers are in the right places, we must first stop the wrong powers from being wielded by the wrong people in the wrong places. And so Britain needs the new constitutional changes we propose. New rules to enable public servants always to serve the public, an end to MPs' second jobs, a ban on all foreign funding of politics, all enforced by an anti-corruption agency to investigate wrongdoing, all guided by an integrity and ethics commission that monitors standards in public life, backed up by a citizens' jury undertaking a regular review of standards in public life. 50,000 civil servants transferred out of London to save £200 million, many of them coming to Wales. And that's part of the economic reconstruction of our country that the Commission proposes. After 12 and now 13 years of some of the lowest growth, lowest productivity, and post-Brexit, the lowest investment in our history, it has meant that today Welsh GDP per person is 73% of the UK average. Wages averaging at least £1 an hour lower here, and that's nearly £40 a week below those of the UK as a whole. With the shocking, unacceptable and immoral consequence, 39% of children in poverty and more than 33% of households depending on universal credit. And sadly, poverty and inequality will last until doomsday if a UK Conservative government is all that confronts it. Only a UK Labour government working with a Welsh Labour government, Keir Starmer and Mark Drakeford working together, only that can support the new innovative job creation that we need in expanding economic clusters here around semiconductors, cybersecurity, renewables, and including steel, all capable of creating well-paid jobs in digital, environmental, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, creative industries that are the future engines of growth, employment hotspots capable of creating tens of thousands of new high-paying jobs, showing us how local economic partnerships can create a supportive local environment for new job creation. And I know from discussions with Mark and your team that this mission is your mission. So instead of developing only some of the potential of some people in some areas of our country, we can create a country that develops all the potential of all people in all areas. You know, as Labour Party members, that wherever you travel in Wales, there is talent yet to be developed, ability still to be realised, endless potential waiting to be fulfilled, and conscious of the huge gap today between the Britain we have and the Britain we have it in our power to secure, we must act with a new government at Westminster. You know, 100 years ago, our Labour pioneers set out on this journey to build a country founded on social justice. And their struggles, their sacrifices, their achievements will, I know, inspire all of us to redouble our efforts to secure that stronger, fairer, greener economy under Keir Starmer and Mark Drakeford. That must be our goal. That is our defining mission. And that, friends, will be Labour's next achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon, for those inspiring words. And Conference, Gordon's report on the future of the UK makes a compelling and unarguable case for urgent change. Change to reform the UK and its outdated structures. Change to rebuild the institutions of our democracy that have been so debased and undermined by this Conservative government. Change to make the case for what Mark so powerfully outlined yesterday, our solidarity union, and Gordon, a union of self-government and shared government. This will strengthen our unity to tackle the Tory legacy of poverty and inequality. And change to decentralise and devolve power and opportunity to people and communities across Wales and the UK. In Conference, that idea will sound very familiar to many of us in this hall, those of us who came together to make a similar case at the referendum in 1997, the referendum that established our Senedd. Because we knew then, as we know now, that decisions are best made as close as possible to people's everyday lives by leaders who understand them and are directly accountable to them. And over the last nearly quarter of a century, we in Wales and we in Welsh Labour have shown the benefits of this different way of doing politics. And that's reflected in the growing confidence in devolution that's so evident today, so evident in all the debates we've had over this weekend. And Conference, we can all list the many things that make us most proud of what Labour in government in Wales has achieved since 1999. Whether it's the groundbreaking legislation to tackle violence against women and girls, our basic income pilot for care leavers, or free prescriptions, the universal rollout of free school meals in our primary schools. But devolution is not just about what we do, it's about how we do it. And when we welcome Labour colleagues from over the border, they're always impressed by the genuine partnership working that they see here. Services that are more joined up, more accountable, closer relationships with the people who provide and use those services. And that approach is reflected by Labour in government, locally and nationally. Together, we adopt that joined-up way of working because the policies that affect people's lives are so closely linked. And Conference, none of us can achieve social justice, the social justice that Gordon and Mark and all Andrew earlier on today have spoken so powerfully about, and Steve, of course, from Tulo. We can't achieve that social justice if we're held back by poverty, inequality, or discrimination. And that brings me to the two excellent motions from Monmouth and Pontypridd CLPs, which make the case for the devolution of justice to Wales. Conference, I don't just support these motions because of the terrible mess that the Tories have made since 2010 and their cruel policies. the disgraceful decision to cut legal aid and to curtail access to justice for some of the most vulnerable in our society, the appalling privatisation of the probation service, leading to the tragic, literally lethal failures that are referenced in Monmouth's motion, the cuts to policing across England and Wales, which has had real effects on the ground, despite the best efforts of our Labour police and crime commissioners here today with us, and Labour's funding for PCSOs. No, Conference, I don't support the devolution of these services simply because of Tory failure, but because I believe that they can be better delivered here in Wales by a Labour government that recognises that justice is about so much more than people's experience of courts and prisons. It's about those early interventions in health or education with Flying Start, tackling violence against women and domestic abuse, and providing treatment for drug and alcohol issues or additional support at school. Throughout all of this and our policies and our work, we recognise that people's experience of justice system is not the same as the David Lammy report of 2017 and our Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan reinforces people from black and ethnic minorities are overrepresented in every stage of the criminal justice system. And can I thank Jenny Rathbone and the Senate's Equality and Social Justice Committee of their report about women's experiences in the justice system when they say the harm to women arising is there clearly in the current devolution settlement. So finally, Conference, I believe the case for devolution of justice has been made. Gordon's Commission specifically recommended the devolution of probation and youth justice to Wales, an important first step in this journey. We're preparing for that now under Mark's leadership with all of those who work in the justice system, who work in our communities and who have the lived experience of how we can change this for social justice for Wales. So let's go from this conference and make this a reality with Keir, now Keir being our next Prime Minister, supported by us here in Wales. Let's make this a reality. We can do it and we will do it. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Jane. Can I now ask delegates from Pontypridd CLP and Monmouth CLP to move motions 10 and 11? If you can come to the front.
Conference. My name is Benjamin Trewartha. I am the Youth Officer for the Pontypridd Constituency Labour Party, and this is my first conference and the first time I've spoken at any Labour conference. I am also a law student and hope to be one of those lefty lawyers that we've all heard about. I am particularly proud to speak in support of this motion, which is in support of the report of our former Labour Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, commissioned by the next Labour Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. As a young member, I am fully behind the principles which underpin the Gordon's report, which is now our report. Decisions should be taken as close to the people and communities as possible. That is the Labour way. It is what we are about, empowering working people and empowering our communities, bringing decision-making as close to people as possible, and that is what devolution is about. As a law student, I fully support the recommendation that we should commence the process of devolution of justice by devolving youth and justice and probation. Probation, privatised and decimated by the Tories, is a fundamental part of the justice system and should be integrated with other devolved public services. Youth justice is already predominantly devolved. It makes no sense for it to continue as part of an over-centralised, London-based Ministry of Justice. Those Tories who oppose the devolution of justice have offered no justification for the continuation of a system which is best delivered locally, in our communities as part of a range of public services, designed to support young people, to keep them out of the justice system as far as possible, to offer support through the devolved services of education, health, housing and social services. The innovative Welsh Government's Universal Basic Income pilot is part of the range of supports that are an essential part of a justice system, which should be entrenched with the delivery of a social justice, as is the Wealth Youth Justice Blueprint instigated by the Welsh Government. And Conference, this must just be the start of a process of radical reform. Over time, I want to see the full devolution of criminal justice, legal aid and policing. And Gordon's report says there is no reason why this should not happen. Conference, for too long, we have ignored the failings of the over-centralised and underfunded justice system, a system which doesn't deliver justice, legal justice, or social justice. Our motion endorses Gordon Brown's report in full, its recommendations in full, in our next Labour General Election Manifesto and delivered in the first year of the next Labour government. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you for sticking to time. Delegate from Monmouth CLP.
Hello, I will be speaking on motion 11. So I'm not the best person to speak about this because I do not have much experience with what I'm talking about. So, yeah. If I was in trouble and if I got it wrong and broke the law, what sort of probation service would I want? What sort of probation service would you want? I'd want the amazingly gold standard probation service that we had in Wales and England before 2014. Before Chris Grayling ruined it, privatised it. Justice should never be for profit. In 2020, I was sexually assaulted. And the fact that my assaulters could have been let out of prison without any help, any proper support from getting out of prison is appalling, because people like me and other young people could have been affected by that problem. I'd want the sort of probation service that the Welsh Government wants. I'd want a probation officer like, let me think of a good probation officer, oh yes, Mark Drakeford. I'd want a probation service that works in my community with me. I'd want a probation service that isn't dictated to the worst justice ministers like Chris Grayling and Dominic Raab. I'd want a probation service that was built to heal, reconcile, nurture, not to hate. I'd want a probation service that was in tune with the values that we harbour in Wales and hold dear to us. I'd want a probation service devolved to Wales. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. I don't think Mark's quite in the field for another job just at the moment, but thank you for the suggestion. If I can call speakers in the debate now. Jeff, lady at the front, and Keba.
Jeff Cuthbert, Police and Crime Commissioner for Gwent, also speaking at my first conference this year. The case for devolving the criminal justice system, including the police, is not about increasing the authority and responsibility of the Welsh Government. Rather, it's about bringing together under one roof those public services that support people at what might be the most difficult time of their lives. People that might be highly vulnerable and perhaps suffering directly from the effects of crime. Now, many of our partner services, such as social services, children's services, and health, are devolved already, of course. But many of our criminal justice partners are not. Having all these services under one roof is surely the right thing to do, as it has been for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Yesterday, we heard very clearly and with great passion about the strength of our Labour values, and particularly for us in Wales. Just imagine the type of criminal justice system we could have here if it could be securely based on our values. Consequently, I'm convinced that the case for devolving the criminal justice system, including the police, is strong and clear, and the commitment on youth justice and probation is a good start. Now, of course, We cannot just hang around waiting. There's too much work to do. That's why we seek, PCCs seek, the maximum levels of collaboration with devolved and other reserved partners now. It's fair to say that we're ahead of our colleagues in England in terms of partnership working. We have the full opportunity to be active participants in the statutory public service boards as statutory invitees. The links with health, local government and housing are particularly valued. And we have established a policing partnership board for Wales in collaboration with the Welsh Government. And we work closely with the Welsh Government on major issues such as violence against women and girls and anti-racism. So why bother to devolve? Well, the current arrangements are fragile in the sense that if PCCs with very different views from ourselves are elected in the future, then the whole collaborative approach could disappear. And that is why constitutional change needs to be discussed and considered very seriously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, delegates. If you can make sure you register at the front with the desk before you come up, and thank you for sticking to time. Come up next.
Good morning. Sue McConnell, Councillor Sue McConnell from Monmouth CLP. I'm also the Vice Chair of NAPO Cymru, the Union for Probation Workers, the branch in Wales. And my first time I'm speaker at this conference. I have been banging on about this at probation conferences for decades, but here we go. In 2014, the then Justice Secretary Chris Grayling rushed through the disastrous part privatisation of probation, and successive Tory Justice Secretaries have ham-fistedly tried to cobble reforms of this reform. So the private companies have gone, but so have nearly all of the experienced staff, made redundant to cut costs or just walking away in despair. I'd like to echo the First Minister's speech yesterday. I'm still here, but I'm only here because I think I can make a difference, and while I can make a difference, I'll keep on. The once independent probation service is now under the direct control of the Ministry of Justice and welded to the prison service. We have every respect for our brothers and sisters in the prison service, but we are not in the same business. Probation should and must be a social service as much as a criminal justice one. The once proud and effective probation service is on its knees. Grayling's current heir and successor, Dominic Raab, brings all the same cruelty and social vandalism to the role. He has fostered longer prison sentences, more prison sentences, and blocked release on parole. He's even blocking the transfer from closed prisons to open conditions as part of that progression to the community. Lo and behold, we have overcrowded prisons, and they're now literally overflowing. Operation Safeguard, that's where police cells are used for the overspill, has been operating since late February, but it's clear to all that this isn't going to be sufficient. Conference, I've been informed that HMPPS, Prisons and Probation Service, is moving staff from headquarters to frontline, where they will be recategorising en masse, that is reassessing the risks posed by people in prison in order to secure their early release, to keep shunting them out. This isn't crisis management, this is chaos. It's another Tory sticking plaster move. Their long-term plan is to build prisons for another 20,000 people at a cost of £3.75 billion to cope with the forecast growth in the prison population from the current level of 83,000+ to an estimated 94,500 by March 25. They'll just keep building prisons and keep locking people up. NAPO has campaigned from the outset of Grayling's intervention for probation to be devolved to Wales. We are more than encouraged by the commitment of Welsh Government to the devolution of probation and youth justice, and grateful, really grateful for its close collaboration with justice unions in developing this model.
Please sum up, Delegate. Thank you.
The system is in crisis. We want a probation service in line with the social justice principles so eloquently expressed by the First Minister yesterday. We work to protect victims and to work humanely with people in the prison and probation system, often carrying their own burden of trauma and grief. I ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Good morning, conference. Chair, Keba Mane, Chair of Unison National Black Workers across UK, an active, proud community organizer at Torvine CLP. Speaking in support of devolution of justice to the Welsh government. Chair, conference, speaking with the knowledge and expertise of dispensing justice in the locality as a senior presiding magistrate in Gwent. I am speaking with you from an authoritative perspective in delivering local justice for local people. Conference, Unison believes that justice service in Wales should be devolved from Westminster and placed under the authority of the Welsh government with the correct funding, very important, which estimated to be £10 million, or 13 million pounds, an additional cost of £10 million per annum to keep it running. So it must be devolved with that amount of money. Prison and probation service in Wales should therefore no longer be under the control of Westminster as it stands now. Conference. The former Lord Chief Justice in England and Wales, Lord Thomas, was commissioned by the Welsh government in 2017 to review justice in Wales. The Thomas Commission proposed the devolution of justice to enable proper alignment of justice policies and spending, enabling social, health, education, and economy development policies in Wales to underpin practical long-term solutions to the issues that local people are facing in the local community. Very important sometimes, the Westminsters, they're so diverse away from the people in Gwent and the rest of us in UK that they have no idea what works. You're sitting there in court and you pass in sentence and you say to probation, can you provide a report, or what we call fast delivery report of this particular person to prevent them going through the revolving door? Because that's why, as Minister has alluded to. Conference, the light is on. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Keba. If I can call Jenny and then Alan to close the debate, please.
Jenny Rathbone, I chair the Equality and Social Justice Committee in the Senedd. I thank Pontypridd and Monmouthshire for putting forward these motions, because I think it's really important that we discuss these issues. I think I agree that probation and youth justice is a first step, as Jane Hutt has said. At the Fabian Fringe yesterday lunchtime, I heard people saying, we're no longer making the case for devolution. We're getting on with it and doing what we need to do. I think that enthusiasm for doing things more effectively is fantastic, and the delegate for Monmouthshire encapsulated what we need. We need to heal, reconcile, nurture, not to hate. But there is a moral hazard involved in just steaming ahead. And I'd just like to quote the words of the First Minister in evidence to committee in the Senate. Many of the advances we've seen in Wales, a drug and alcohol court, a family dispute court, there wouldn't be examples in Wales if the Welsh Government wasn't putting funding into making those things happen, whereas they're fully funded by the UK Government when they happen in England. So we are in a sort of moral hazard territory. We do it because it's the right thing. We do it because we know it will make a positive difference to families and to the system in Wales. But we are paying for things that in other places the UK Government pays for fully and properly, whereas here in Wales, the Welsh Government find itself always being expected to not just play our part in terms of joint working and so on, but funding things that really are not for us to fund in order to make them happen. And I think that encapsulates some of the problems that we face if we simply steam ahead. I applaud the work that is being done by the government, the women-centred approach to the Women's Pathfinder whole system approach, which involves developing trauma-informed community women's centres, like the one in Rhyl, which I know former Senate member Anne Jones has always been very supportive of, and a new one in Cardiff run by the Nelson Trust, which I and several other people in this room have visited recently. They are developing the evidence that this supportive, trauma-informed approach works to keep vulnerable women out of the prison system, where we are simply piling up the trauma, not only for those women, but for their children as well. And that sending women to prison for non-violent offences is unbelievably expensive and completely ineffective, and it's just creating new generations of traumatised young people. So I absolutely support the devolution of justice and policing, but I think we have to ensure that we get the devolution of probation and of youth justice in the first year of the Welsh Government, of the UK Labour Government, so that we can then demonstrate with the evidence that we absolutely know what we're doing and that we're getting the money to go with delivering those new services, rather than trying to do everything without the funding that, let's face it, the savings from this will come to the Ministry of Justice through not sending people to prison for £60,000 a year. So I absolutely support the devolution of justice, but I think we need to take quite a considered approach to it.
Thank you, delegates. I now call on Alan Michael to close the debate.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Diolch yn fawr. Alan Michael, Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales. It's a privilege to reply to this timely debate at such a significant point in our devolution journey. It's also relatively straightforward because the Welsh Executive invites you to support both of the motions. But what the debate has shown is the real appetite for us to go much further and to go much faster. And I share that sense of urgency. Not least because criminal justice, family justice and social justice are best pursued together in Wales and locally within Wales. The Monmouth motion is right to seek urgent action to devolve probation and youth service to Wales. Probation was a local service in the days when the First Minister and I played roles in the probation service in Cardiff. Youth justice is a local service with ministerial responsibility already shared between Welsh Government ministers and Whitehall. So devolution of probation in youth justice is long overdue, and it is endorsed in both motions. I'd like to say that 2 weeks ago I presented awards to prison and probation staff in Wales, and it was impressive. Despite Grayling's efforts, there are great people working in the service, and the probation service in Wales is one of the important partners that I work with as a Police and Crime Commissioner. Others include Public Health Wales, local authorities, all the devolved bodies that we work with. The Pontypridd motion rightly endorses the Gordon Brown review call for reform of our political system to bring decision-making closer to people and their communities. So devolution to Wales and devolution within Wales. That makes sense because probation and youth justice must be delivered locally, linked to community safety. There's another area of policy and practice where Wales is already ahead of the game, led by local government and local policing with the support of Welsh Government. But these must be first steps, as so many speakers have said. Pursuing the devolution of policing and justice, more generally, was a Welsh Labour manifesto commitment in the 2021 Senedd election. It's now part of the programme of government. But more important still, our ministers, Jane Hutt and others, Mick Antoniou, have played significant roles in preparing Welsh Government for those responsibilities to be devolved. Gordon Brown reminded us today that his report didn't just endorse the devolution of probation and youth justice, it also opened the door to the wider devolution of policing and justice, looking to the Rowan Williams Commission to make specific recommendations. It may not happen overnight, but the decisions, the political decisions, need to be taken now to enable professionals, agencies, police and crime commissioners to plan and develop the partnership working details locally for which Wales is now becoming renowned. In the 10 years that I've been the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales, I'm very proud to be part of cooperative working with police, with other criminal justice agencies, working together while seizing the benefits of working in the devolved environment, not just the additional money for PCSOs, but the integration, the working together across different agencies. We've seized the opportunity, as Jeff Cuthbert said, to build up the infrastructure through policing in Wales, developing Criminal Justice Board for Wales, linking the Welsh Board to local ownership and delivery, and inviting the First Minister and Jane Hutt to chair our Policing Partnership Board for Wales. It works now, and development of the Welsh model for criminal justice accelerated during COVID-19, when for the first time our police were called on to enforce Welsh law and to work in the cooperative environment which was created by the First Minister and the ministerial team, and which has had so much national admiration expressed on so many occasions. Conference, we're not just tackling the easy stuff now, either, as we work as non-devolved bodies. We are being truly radical. Look, please, at the Anti-Racism Action Plan for Criminal Justice in Wales. Practical action signed up to by policing and by all the criminal justice agencies working in Wales, mirroring the ambition and community engagement in the plan set out by our Welsh Labour government. Cooperation, doing our work together, makes absolute sense. It works. It's happening now. But as Jeff Cuthbert said, it's fragile. It's voluntary. It's missing the glue, which is the line of responsibility to Welsh ministers and scrutiny by our Senedd. It's that democratic deficit that needs to be put right as a matter of agency. So support both motions. Devolution of youth justice is overdue and urgent, but let's be united and confident in seeking devolution of policing and criminal justice with an early decision and a timeline for delivery, so that we can together make the criminal justice system in Wales the most effective, the most efficient it can possibly be, as Lord Thomas called for, but also the fairest that it can possibly be. Gad i ni heddiw cefnogi'r galwad o mynwy a Pontypridd I symud ar frys I datganoli'r gwasanaeth prawf a cyfiawnder ieuenctid. Ond gad I ni hefyd penderfynu I gweithio I cael penderfyniad gynnar I datganoli plismona ar system cyfiawnder, gan adeiladu ar y fframwaith cyfiawnder trwy partneriaeth a cydweithio sydd eisoes wedi cael ei datblygu yma yng Nghymru. Carpe diem, seize the moment, As Mark Drakeford said yesterday, hurry up, please, it's time. But in the meantime, please give unanimous endorsement to these two motions. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for the tremendous work that you and our other fantastic PCCs do. I'll now take the vote on motion 10. Can I have a reminder that the recommendation to vote for this motion? Show of hands in favour. And show of hands against. That's carried unanimously, I believe. And then motion 11. From Monmouth CLP again, the recommendation is to vote for it. So show of hands for. Show of hands against. And again, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, delegates. So we now move on to the topic of debate on organising our party. And can I call on Anne Jones to open this debate, please?
Conference, how we organise as a party has evolved and changed throughout our history. Many of us have been here on many occasions, and I think people have been here for a long time, and we've seen how our party has evolved. But it's an important conversation, but one that must be entered into carefully with consideration and patience. And I know sometimes that's something that none of us want to listen to, but patience, I think, on this occasion is needed. As we look to the future of our own party, we should consider and reflect those strengths we already have, and the unique identity that we forged here in Wales. And we must consider how best we protect that identity, and how, more importantly, though, how we continue to win here in Wales. The Welsh Executive Committee already has responsibilities and powers that it can use to the benefit of our party here in Wales. And we're selecting on the new parliamentary boundaries before the rest of the UK. So it ensures that our members will have more of a say in who their parliamentary candidate is. But more importantly, again, that we are ready to fight that general election whenever it comes. In our last set of local elections, where we saw the marvellous fact that we no longer have a Tory council in Wales, we had some coalition agreements that had to be entered into, but they were signed off by the Welsh Executive Committee, those who know what it is in the interests of the party locally and what's in the best interests of our members, but also of our constituents and the communities that we represent. And so the Welsh Executive are using the powers that we have here in Wales to help protect our electoral successes, but also to ensure that our members have a vital say in how we move forward. And so it's with this in mind, the question of how we will protect our Welsh Labour identity and how we will protect our electoral successes, that I ask delegates to enter into this debate with those views held firmly at the forefront of what they're going to say. Diolch, Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Can I now call on delegates from Montgomery CLP to move the motion and Clwyd South to second it, please?
Hi, Conference. My name is Bria Delamay. I'm a delegate from Montgomeryshire, and I'm moving Composite A on behalf of Montgomeryshire, Ynys Môn, Ceredigion, and Clwyd South. Conference, this motion has arrived on the floor at the exact right time. This weekend, I've been to a few events, and we've had amazing discussions about the work of the Gordon Brown Report and the Constitutional Commission set up by the Welsh Labour government under our leader, Mark Drakeford. And at these events, and I know across the membership, we are having vibrant, exciting discussions on devolution and the decentralisation of power. And it's become clear that the UK is no longer a monolithic, centralised structure, and neither should it be. Powers and responsibilities have been devolved to Wales and to the Senedd, and it's important that we bring the organisational structures of the party in line with the devolved nature of our politics, and this motion will allow the WEC to do just that. So this is a logical step, bringing the party closer to the reality of the UK today. Welsh Labour needs more space. It needs more opportunities to add its own unique voice to the debates of our time. Politics in Wales is and has always been that little bit different from the rest of the UK. And being seen to be different matters. Clear red water matters. It matters to our party members and it matters to all voters at the polls next year. Welsh Labour must be able to speak credibly for itself if it's going to speak credibly for Wales. Ignoring this opportunity of this motion means ignoring the future. We might not always have a Labour Party in Westminster ready to take power like we do today. So this motion protects Welsh Labour against the unpredictable nature of our politics. Because a Welsh Labour that has the agility and flexibility to respond quickly is a strong Welsh Labour government. So this motion is necessary as well as timely. Creating more devolved structures within the party today ensures a future where Welsh Labour has a clear identity and the clear red constitutional backing to work effectively within the Labour movement. Conference, I have two older sisters, and growing up, I was the baby of the family. And I was lucky because I always had someone to look up to and to ask questions. And we spent a lot of time growing up together. And that meant that we developed a lot of the same interests. We all agreed that Charlie Red, a scent any millennial in this room probably will remember, was the best. At some point, we all wanted to be Egyptian archaeologists. I don't really remember why. Thank you. Collectively, we were the biggest supporters of the boy band Blue in the whole of Mid-Wales. But as we grew older and we moved away and we got jobs, we started to develop our own interests. And we selected our own path just like any individual should do. And I'm sure that we disagreed with a lot of the choices that each other's made, and we would never have considered doing those things. But when we come back for Christmas or a birthday or something like that, we share what we've learned, and we ask each other questions, and we take interest in those differences. But in any car ride we take together, if one of us puts a Blue song on, we sing in perfect unison and remember every single lyric. This motion will strengthen ties within the wider Labour movement by giving our brothers and sisters in UK Labour the chance to focus on the matters that matter to them. My sisters and I don't always agree, but one thing never changes. As a family, we always support each other through our differences, and we give space to thrive. Conference, as a Labour Party, we are stronger because of our differences, but we are united by a common cause to bring UK Labour governments to every nation within this UK. So Conference, celebrate diversity with me, celebrate our differences, support this motion. Conference, I move.
Thank you. Excellently stuck to time there. Can I invite Clwyd South to second?
Bore da Conference, Anthony Wedlake, Clwyd South, CLP. Can I just say before I start, I've applauded with everyone the elimination of the Tories as leadership of councils in Wales. But just to remind ourselves, we've got Tories clinging onto the coattails of the self-interest of independence in Wrexham, and we're looking forward to drive them out at the earliest possible opportunity. What this motion is definitely not about is having a separate party from UK Labour. It's about asking the Welsh Executive to consult with all party units in Wales how we can have a better sister-sister relationship with UK Labour. We heard Gordon Brown tell us we want entrenched devolution. We can't have entrenched devolution if we don't have a rule book within our own party that reflects our hunger for greater power and devolution of power in Wales. I'd like to give just a small, some would say parochial example, but as you've probably already heard, our constituency is going to be split up into 4. And we're one of those odd constituencies that have an AGM at the end of the year. So at the end of last year, we still don't have an AGM because we're reorganising. And then we were told in January, no, we're not reorganising, have an AGM, even though you've only got 4 more monthly meetings before you do get disbanded. I don't believe the Welsh Executive would have understood that, and they wouldn't have told us what the UK NEC has done. But we do deserve the right, and the comrade from Montgomeryshire has described it well, the right to be different. I can't wait, we can't wait for a UK Labour government, but we also know, after so many years in power, we need to continue to be more and more radical, and we're proud of what is also different. And my personal fear is, for example, I don't want a UK Labour government to say we can build more hospitals, but here's a PFI initiative in which to fund it. For example, I don't want a UK NEC to tell local CLPs who they can and cannot have on their shortlists. But more importantly, than that, because I'm much more positive than I am fearful, we are at our best when we are our most radical. We are our best when we don't get outflanked by the left, by our opponents in Wales, which was exactly a statement Mark said when he was campaigning to be leader. We can't afford to be out-radicalised by our opponents in Wales. We need the right to continue to have that clear red water. We need to be trusted as a party in Wales to make the decisions, the radical decisions, in partnership with the UK Labour government, which will make the biggest difference to the people in Wales and will make the biggest difference to drive away the gap in poverty and inequality in our country. Conference, support the motion. Diolch.
Thank you, and thank you for continuing the tradition of keeping our comments to time. I haven't called any delegates yet, sorry, colleague. If you'd like to register with the desk, have you, first? And can I take any other indications? I'll take in rounds of 3. Jack in the corner and lady with your hand up, piece of paper up there. And then I'll take the following 3 afterwards. Okay, so first 3 delegates, do you want to come up? Thank you.
Too eager, conference, sorry. Chair, conference, Peter Crews, Unison Labour Link, speaking in support of the composite. First, can I thank the CLPs for bringing this composite forward. As far as we're concerned, it's as important as many of the other debates. Conference, we should not be afraid of exploring further devolution of party rules. Unison Labour Link at the moment does not have a hard and fast position on further devolution of party rules. And I say at this point, what we are clear about is the importance of consultation and having a debate about those rules. For as much as we defend devolution of powers to Wales and government, we have to ask ourselves about our internal rules as well. How can we sit back and not explore devolution of Labour Party rules to the Welsh Labour Conference? I refer you to the last 2 paragraphs, which is why I'm here. Because it calls on the WEC to explore the proposals. And it calls for consultation and debate and to report back to this conference. That's Unison's position, and we will take part in that debate, and we will make our decision at the time when that report comes. Support this composite, because the one thing we can't do is be afraid of having the debate about all the rules coming to us in Wales Labour Party.
Joy Rose, Ynysmon CLP. I'm speaking for this motion because Ynysmon is different. Anglesey is an island, and we have a battle ahead to replace not only our Tory MP who won for the first time in years and years and years of being Labour. She won on the coattails of Brexit. But our battle is different from other people's battle because we also have Plaid Cymru. And Plaid Cymru dominates our local council. And Plaid Cymru are running a very good campaign to replace Virginia Crosby, the Tory. Decisions made in Wales about Welsh public services have been undermined by Tory government that has starved the whole of the UK of funding. Nevertheless, the principle of devolution is well established in Wales and Scotland, in Manchester, in Liverpool. All the regions are well led. But there is more to do. We now need power transferred further, including to my own area, Ynys Môn, Anglesey, in North Wales. I'm proud that the Labour Party has been the main driver of devolving power away from London. And Keir Starmer is on board. We must demonstrate our commitment to devolution and ensure that the Labour Party reflects this. And as we digest Gordon Brown's commission on the UK's future report, we can say with frustration that one thing has completely failed to keep pace with the changes we've already seen. Labour's rule book. Much of the party's functions are still located in London. To quote Jack Sargent MS, this is not an abstract subject. The ability of constituent parts of the Labour Party to plough their own furrow and be truly unique is crucial. One of the main reasons Welsh Labour have been so successful is we've been as different and as separate as the current rulebook allows. Driven by people like Rhodri Morgan, Jane Hutt, Mark Drakeford, Julie Morgan and Mick Antoni, we have been uniquely Welsh and bold. It's now time the party's rulebook reflected this. Welsh Labour is best placed to make internal decisions in Wales. And this would send a message to the public that it's not Labour in Wales, it's Welsh Labour. Gordon Brown's commission is sending the message to trust nations with more powers. The power to devolve the rulebook sits with the UK party. So Labour must catch up. The principle of devolution is right. Decisions should be made in the nations and regions of the UK. It can only be a positive step to achieving what we all want, continued Labour success in Wales, and Keir Starmer winning a general election. Thank you to Gordon Brown for his boldness. Let's be the same. Let's be as bold. Let's decentralise the Labour Party. There is an appetite for this change. I believe this is best done through Welsh Conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conference. Support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. And that allows me to seamlessly link to Jack Sargent, who's the next speaker in the debate.
Cadeirydd, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Chair. Jack Sargent, member of the Senate for Allen and Deeside. In Conference, it's a real privilege to be able to address you today in this debate about the organisation of our party and in support of the motions in front of us this morning. This party belongs to its members, it belongs to its affiliates, and it belongs to the people of Wales. And it is in Cymru where we want the decisions about its future to be made. Friends, we should all be tremendously proud to be Welsh Labour, a party that is three things. We are Welsh, we are bold, and we are successful. And you cannot separate these three things. They are all intrinsically related. Conference, we win because we are bold, and in turn, winning gives us the chance to deliver that unique agenda. Conference, cast your mind back to May 2021. It was a difficult election for Labour elsewhere in the United Kingdom. We lost seats that were once considered safe. But in Cymru, in Wales, under our bold First Minister Mark Drakeford, we won. We won the best ever election result in the Senev's history. We cannot afford to ignore that lesson, Conference. We have been on a devolution journey for 25 years, and we need to look positively at the next journey over the next 25 years. Conference, 25 years ago at the start of that journey, we had leading figures, our late friend Rhodri Morgan, Jane Hutt, Julie Morgan, and of course, Mark Drakeford. And they were bold enough to say that Welsh Labour had to be unique. And Conference, they did this because they saw that anything other than being unique would put a risk to our chances of winning elections. We know Conference Scottish Labour chose not to follow. So this motion in front of you today is the next step on that journey. It is about protecting the uniqueness of the Welsh Labour brand and what it means to the people of Wales. And each and every one of you delegates who has a vote today, you have a choice when voting. And I would like you to make that choice with the interest of Welsh Labour continuing to win, continuing to be successful in your mind. Conference, be as bold and ambitious and be as confident as Jane Hutt, as our friend Rhodri Morgan, and of course our First Minister Mark Drakeford. Vote to put more control in our own hands. Chair, I'll end with this. At the start of my contribution, I said, this party belongs to its members, its affiliates, and the people of Wales. And it is in Cymru that we want those decisions to be made. Conference, I urge you to support the motions in front of you this afternoon. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, delegates. If you're succinct, I can take one more round of questions. So, anyone? Darren, do you want to come in? Back there with your hand in the air. Yep, and come in. Waving at you. Yeah, this. Okay, okay. Your hand up there.
Chair Conference, Darren Williams, Cardiff West CLP, speaking in support of the composite motion. As time has gone on, Ron Davies's famous statement that devolution is a process, not an event, has proven to be increasingly correct. In recent years, we've seen the Senedd acquire additional legislative and tax-raising powers and broaden the scope of its responsibilities and the depth of its ability to act on them. And we've already discussed this morning the next stage of that process as we push for devolution of control over policing and justice. The UK Tory government, of course, is resistant to this, but as there is growing support for greater autonomy among the public, I think it will find it increasingly difficult to resist. And it was good to hear Keir Starmer say yesterday that Westminster hoards power and that a Labour government in the UK would devolve it further. Within the party, however, as we've already heard, power and responsibility remain very centralised, with the Welsh Party having control over relatively little beyond those areas related directly to the Senedd and its current responsibilities. Organisationally and politically, our Welsh Party remains largely subordinate to the UK NEC and the UK General Secretary, with very little ability to vary rules and procedures. Now, no one is suggesting that we should change the way the party functions in Wales in every area just for the sake of it. But the political landscape and culture in Wales are different, and it would make sense for the Welsh Party to have the scope to apply some flexibility in at least some areas. Previous speakers have talked about the big political principles that devolution allows us to act on. But to take a more practical example, sometimes decisions are made by the NEC that don't seem to make sense to us here in Wales, but which we have no power to change. And a recent example of this is the ban on hybrid party meetings, which just seems to make life more difficult to no obvious political effect. So this motion doesn't specify any particular area of rules, but simply seeks to begin a discussion about potentially seeking responsibility over certain areas of our operation in Wales. In this, it would be reaffirming and putting on a more solid foundation a decision already taken by the WEC some time ago, which authorised Mark to talk to the UK Party General Secretary, David Evans, about progress in this area. And of course, any proposals that did emerge from the consultation that the motion calls for would ultimately be subject to a decision by the UK Party Conference. So let's have this important conversation within the party and let's explore in a systematic way the options for further devolution and decentralisation within the party in Wales. Please support the composite.
Thank you, Chair. Comrades, Dylan Lewis Rowlands a ranid o'r undeb, yn siarad o blaid datganoli reolau. Dylan Lewis Rowlands, proudly on behalf of Unite the Union, speaking in favour of devolution of the rulebook. I will start, if you will permit me, with a quote from an Iron Bevan. The only reason to attain power is to give it away. For 100 years, the Labour Party has accrued power. Not necessarily, sadly, the power of government, but it has accrued power. The power and the privilege of a lasting contract with the Welsh people. For 100 years, every election, we have put that contract up for renewal, and every election, the people of Wales have renewed our pact. We are the most successful party in the history of democracy. The Welsh people, for the past 24 years, have put their trust in us to deliver for them in Cardiff Bay. And we have the most generous support student package in all of the UK, enabling people like me, a working class lad from the valleys, to be the first in his family to have gone to university. A growing Welsh language, where again, people like me have had the privilege of a first-class education via the Welsh language. A government that acts in social partnership, guaranteeing trade unions have their seat at the table as a voice for the workers. And a government that acts in social solidarity, ensuring no primary school child goes hungry, ensuring that young people are guaranteed a future, ensuring free prescriptions to guarantee no tax on ill health, and publicly owned rail, publicly owned building companies, and a publicly owned energy company. But this conference is just the beginning. In passing this motion, we will unlock the potential, we will unlock the destiny of our party that has worked so hard for the Welsh people. We can put our radical vision for the future of our nation into practice, taking the power we have attained and giving it to those who matter most in our party. The members, the trade unions, the affiliates and the activists of Welsh Labour. We can redefine the antiquated framework in which we are working and develop a new, radical, empowering framework where Welsh Labour and UK Labour work in solidarity as equals. We need to transform our party into another product of devolution, another success of devolution, a party that mirrors and enacts its radical vision for the future. And I will finish with this. We are the party of devolution. We are the party of social partnership. We are the party of social solidarity. Ni yw'r wir plaid dros Cymru. We are the true party of, for and from Wales.
Bob Davis from Montgomeryshire, speaking in favour of this modest, sensible, timely, one might even say overdue motion for discussion, for the consideration of possibilities, for the full involvement of relevant organisations within Wales to express their views. Now, it's possible that some people may feel some concern about the extent of separation, if they see it that way. I think Ken Skates, rather before fully understanding the issues, used the word split from Welsh Labour. I see no split from UK Labour. I see nothing like that in the discussions that we might have. But we must have the opportunity to have those discussions. If we do not leave this conference and begin that discussion immediately, consider what Plaid will say. Because there are places in Wales where the mood is changing a little bit, and we must take consideration of that mood. Plaid will be opposition in some parts of Wales. If we do not begin this process immediately, they will say, goodness me, these people cannot even run their own affairs. They don't trust them. They're not trusted to consider their own affairs in Wales. How can they possibly be trusted with the government of Wales? Now, We know we can be trusted with the Government of Wales. We have been the Government of Wales. But it's a little bit fragile. How many seats could we lose and still retain the power? Don't take that risk. Don't give Plaid that opportunity. This is a simple, straightforward, reasonable motion for consultation. Give it your wholehearted support, please. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. As WEC Chair, I've been asked to respond to this debate, and I'd like to thank delegates for their insightful and intelligent contributions to the debate this morning. WEC has agreed to support this motion to continue this discussion and will welcome CLPs and affiliated organisations in their contributions to this debate in the same spirit that we've seen in the hall today. I was drawn to Gordon Brown's comments at the start of the previous debate. The question he poses is valid in this context too, I believe. Just as we have to debate how we make our United Kingdom fit for the 21st century, we have to also ensure that our party is the best it can be too. As Welsh Labour, we believe in devolution as being the best to serve Wales as part of the United Kingdom, and we believe that too in our party too. We can have the best of both worlds, if you like, as part of the United UK Labour Party, but also with the devolution to take things forward within our own party too. That befits our status not as separatists, but as devolutionists and decentralists. That's certainly something I've found as being a local government leader is vital, to have that respect and partnership across different levels to make sure that decisions are taken at the right level, closest to the people as possible. So I very much welcome the debate today. That mature cooperative relationship between UK and Welsh Labour is vital. I would remind delegates we've already secured devolution of large parts of our rulebook, and as WEC Chair, I will seek and expect full engagement with our NEC. You have that pledge from me as the Chair of the Welsh Executive this year, and I look forward to working with you all to take this forward over the next year if you support this motion. So the WEC recommendation is to support the motion. Can I have a show of hands in favour? A show of hands against? That motion's carried. Thank you, Conference. It's a good job I didn't speak too long, and I've had to shut myself down, wouldn't I, if the light had gone red? Never mind. And thank you to Mark for being part of that debate this morning too. Next, can we move to the topic of debate on workers' rights? Can I call on another fantastic Minister, Hannah Blythen, to open this debate?
Conference. I stand here today proud to serve in a Welsh Labour government, proud to be a trade unionist and proud to be part of our Labour movement. We are a government committed to social partnership, bringing together government with employers and trade unions. A government committed to strengthening the trade union movement and growing its membership in Wales. For workers, we believe being in a trade union is the best way to protect rights at work, improve pay, terms, conditions, and wider well-being, and ensure that worker voice is heard. For employers, we believe trade unions are effective partners in creating a better, safer workplace and a highly motivated, highly skilled workforce. And for Wales, we believe trade unions are central to the fabric of our nation and a force for good, helping us to meet the needs of the future. For Conference, there's never been a more important time to be steadfast in our commitment and our course of raising awareness of the positive power of trade union membership, as the UK Conservative government sustained a series of ideological assaults on trade unions and working people. Not least in the anti-democratic, anti-worker, pernicious piece of legislation that is the Strikes Minimum Service Levels Bill. Make no mistake, this anti-strike law is an attack on the basic right to withdraw labour and means that workers could be sacked simply for exercising that right. The legislation is not only ill-conceived and interferes with devolved public services in Wales, it also has the potential to do lasting damage to industrial relations across the UK, and this Welsh Labour government opposes it wholly. The irony is that the same legislation comes from a Conservative government that has repeatedly failed to produce its promised employment bill to extend workers' rights and now is set to do the absolute opposite. Conference, it seems that parliamentary time cannot be found to enhance workers' rights, but there are no issues with finding parliamentary time to take those rights away. True to stereotypical type, the Conservatives are continuing to try and pit working people and communities against one another, waging ideological war on trade unions and minorities, seeking to divide our people, our workplaces and our communities. But Conference, we will not let this happen in Wales, and we stand in solidarity with workers and communities right across the country. Because we know that a race to the bottom on workers' rights is neither in the interests of workers or in the interests of Wales. Because trade unions aren't the enemy of working people, or trade unions are the advocates of working people. Trade unions don't undermine productivity in the workplace. Trade unions improve workplaces. And trade unions don't break down our economy. Trade unions are central to building an economy that works for working people. The back to the future attitude to trade unions adopted by the Tories at Westminster could not be in starker contrast to this Welsh Labour government. We are a government committed to legislating to put social partnership on the statute book through our Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Bill, and I'm incredibly proud to have led that legislation through our Senedd. We're clear that trade unions are the legitimate voice of workers in the workplace, whether that be public, private or voluntary sector, and being part of a trade union is the most effective way to improve well-being at work. That's why, as a government, we are committed to promoting awareness of the role of trade unions, the benefits of joining a trade union, and encourage employers to provide trade union access so that workers have the opportunity and choice to be represented collectively. Building on earlier Welsh Government-backed campaigns to raise awareness of rights and responsibilities in the workplace, we recently launched our Unions and the World of Work pilot project. Developed in social partnership with trade unions, teachers and schools, and working with Wales TUC, the project will support the rollout of careers and work-related experience, an integral part of the new curriculum for Wales. Because we know that younger workers are traditionally the least likely to know their rights at work and sadly the most likely to be exploited at work. If young workers don't understand their workplace rights, it can make them vulnerable to poor employment practices and accidents at work. So through the pilot, a range of resources are being made available to secondary schools across Wales with the aim of empowering the next generation of workers and employers to have a better understanding of employment rights, the role of trade unions and the impact of collective voice and addressing issues in the workplace and beyond. Conference, as you can imagine, this pilot has gone down particularly well with the Daily Mail. But ensuring the next generation of workers, employers and entrepreneurs learn about issues that make work better for all supports our journey to becoming a fair work nation and helps forge a fairer economy. And clearly, it is the right thing to do. In Wales, we typically have amongst the highest rates of trade union membership when compared with other UK countries and the English regions. Figures published last year show that in 2021, the proportion of employees in Wales who were trade union members rose to the highest level since 2014, whilst the corresponding figure fell in other countries of the UK over the same period. But there is much more to do. Whilst it's impressive relative to the rest of the UK, we contrast less favourably against international best practice. So we want to see sustained improvement in levels of trade union density, trade union presence and trade union coverage across Wales. Conference, this Welsh Labour government will continue to work in social partnership with our trade union comrades and the Wales TUC to protect and strengthen the trade union movement and membership in Wales. And we will absolutely continue in our collective efforts to resist any attempts to roll back workers' rights. Because after all, we know that as a Labour movement, we are stronger together as part of our collective endeavour. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Hannah. Can I now ask Aslef to move motion 12, Cynon Valley motion 13 and the GMB motion 14? Thank you.
Prynhawn Conference. I'm Dan Masrani from ASLEF, the Train Drivers Union, and I'm moving motion 12, which is resisting anti-union laws, anti-worker laws. So, friends, comrades, I am a train driver and a very proud trade unionist. My union, ASLEF, represents train drivers like me and has done so for over 140 years. Back in 1880, it was tough. Bosses were all out for the money they could make. We worked long hours in dangerous environments. Pay and safety didn't keep up with the cost of living. Sound familiar to anyone? But this horrendous Tory government wants to roll all this backwards and recreate those days. Across the UK, ASLEF members are currently in dispute with 14 train operators and having to take strike action to have their voices heard and protect our pay and terms and conditions. Nobody wants to go on strike. But when you have a divisive, disgusting Tory government insisting on keeping pay low, trying to squeeze profit out of what should be a public service, and using contract terms to stop the train operators, who are our employers, negotiating with us, we're left with no choice. But it's not just us as train drivers. It's across the board. It's healthcare workers, university staff, civil servants, postal and telecom workers, and many more taking strike action. They're trying to blame the workers for their failings. But what I want to say to this UK Tory government is this: it's not us, it's you. You are the problem. But instead of coming to the table to find a fair resolution, these charlatans in number 10 are trying to bring in even more anti-strike laws and anti-worker laws. They've tried to stop us organising strikes previously through anti-trade union laws, but they failed. So now they bring the minimum service bill, a disgusting bill which would see trade unions sued and individuals sacked, just trying to uphold their legally compliant right to withdraw their labour. Simultaneously, they are trying, with the EU revocation bill, to try and take away so many of our hard-fought and negotiated rights also. Luckily, I'm very proud that I live in Wales, a forward-looking country with a forward-looking Welsh Labour government, where we see industrial relations as a collaboration, not a battle. And it's good to see the UK Labour government will bring in the New Deal for workers to enshrine our rights at work from day one. But until that day, we have to resist. They will not split us or divide us. That's why this motion calls for Welsh Labour to campaign against the Tory anti-worker bills and use every lever we have in government to protect people here in Wales from the attack on what is a fundamental right to withdraw our labour. Thank you. Please support.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference. Councillor Anne Crimmings, Rhondda, Cynon Taf, County Borough Council, representing Cynon Valley constituency and first-time delegate. As a proud trade union member, Conference, I ask for your support for motion 13. The motion speaks for itself, so I won't add to that. I ask for your support for the democratic right to strike. Thank you, Conference.
Chair, Conference, Chris Binding, GMB, moving motion 14 on the Tory attacks on the right to strike. Right now, there's a clear divide in our politics. A divide between those who believe the answer to our economic troubles is more of the same stagnant doctrine, further attacking the democratic freedoms and our pay packets, and those that see we need a change of course. The Tories' so-called minimum service level bill, the anti-strike bill, that is currently making its way through Parliament, undermines a fundamental linchpin of our democracy, the right of workers to withdraw their labour. The UK government has pitched themselves against ambulance and NHS workers, school staff and transport workers, those that get the economy to work, educate our future, and look after us when we need it. After 13 years of the Tories, working people are worse off and the government are running out of scapegoats to blame. At the GMB, we're seeing workers taking strike action who would never have considered it an option before. Those like our members at Amazon in Coventry, who've made history as the first workers to strike at Amazon in the UK. Workers are sick of rampant inflation eating away at their hard-earned wages, sick of being paid the bare minimum after years of pay restraint, and sick of seeing this UK Tory government feather its own nest while the rest of us feel the squeeze. It's no wonder that people can see straight through it. A full-on attack on the entire Labour and trade union movement and on working people in the UK. Let's be clear, this isn't a discussion needed about whose side you're on when those in power are abusing their position. This is an attempt to curb all our collective ability to rebalance power in the workplace. Conference contrasts this to what Welsh Labour is delivering with its social partnership bill, taking the reverse approach. Welsh Labour want us in the room, while the Tories want us shut out. If the Tories don't like what you're saying, they look to silence you. In Wales, we want to hear what workers have to say. Conference compare this to what Keir Starmer has committed a future UK Labour government to do. Labour's New Deal for Workers, which is negotiated and built in partnership with trade unions and approved at our annual conference. The first 100 days of a UK Labour government would repeal the anti-strike bill and other anti-trade union legislation and pass new collective and individual rights, including rights for trade unions to access workplaces and collective bargaining. We have gone through the New Deal and counted 78 policies that, taken together, amount to a big fundamental reforms to put more money in workers' pockets, make them more secure at work, and give unions the level playing field that we need to grow. Right now, the UK has the most restrictive anti-union laws of any Western European nation. But Conference, look at what we could have with a future Labour government led by Keir Starmer. We know that it's still a tough fight ahead. It will require every ounce of effort that we can squeeze out of our Labour movement. But when Labour win, we will change this country for the better. After 13 years, we will finally have a government across the UK that delivers again for working people. Because history has showed us that when Labour wins, working people win. Conference, let's ready ourselves for that fight ahead, and please support motion 14. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all the movers of the motions for sticking to time. Cunham Valley are currently winning the prize for the shortest contribution. There is a prize, that's not just because Andrew Morgan's in the hall. So if I can have a show of hands. There's quite a few people which speak, so the more succinct you can be, the better. Lady in the second row, gentleman there, and gentleman there. Okay, I'll come in for another round of three if people are succinct. I'm also pleased to say that the WEC has agreed to support all three of these motions, so okay, delegate, take care.
Good afternoon, Chair, Conference. My name is Tanzim Hussain Gul, first-time delegate. Thank you. Representing Unison Labour Link, supporting the motion on workers' rights. Yet again, Conference, the trade union movement comes under attack from a Conservative-led Westminster government. We shouldn't be surprised, it's in their DNA. They can't help themselves, and neither can we. Since the trade union movement began over 150 years ago, one common theme has existed, and that has been Tory governments trying to legislate us out of existence while they can keep on trying. From the Torpoldon Martyrs to the infamous Taff Vale judgment through the vicious Thatcher years to Cameron's Trade Union Act, there's always been the same approach. Instead of trying to understand why trade unions sometimes need to take straight action, they have simply introduced law after law, all designed to suppress working people and organised labour. This latest bill is punitive, poisonous and toxic. It is effectively outlawing trade union members' right to withdraw their labour even after jumping through all the legislative hoops that previous Tory governments have imposed on us. Postal ballots, turnout threshold, notice periods. After all that, an employer will still be able to say, I couldn't care less. You will cross a picket line and you will attend work or you will be dismissed. We are drifting into bear with me, I can't say this word, totalitarianism, where civil rights are eroded
and trampled on by a government that has a pathological hatred of trade unions and everything we do to protect our members' interests. And we know where that hatred comes from. It comes from a deep-rooted fear of the working class. They are terrified that the wealth that we create will end up being equally shared and frightened of living in a country where their entitlement and privileges may be taken from them. The reality is that the bill is not about minimum service levels. It is about putting the trade union in their place. Trade unions are responsible organisations. Whenever we have industrial actions, we have always worked with employers to ensure that life and limb cover is provided. We negotiate with employers and exemptions are agreed. In the NHS, there are countless examples of members even leaving picket lines to respond to emergencies if necessary. And let's not forget that as well as an attack on trade unions, this is yet another attempt to devalue and undermine devolution. Conference, we should speak with one voice on the issue today. Vote to support civil rights, trade union rights, devolution. Many of us in this conference have been involved over the years in supporting the work of the Justice for Columbia campaign. Colombian trade unions were the subject of years of brutal attacks that threatened their very existence. Just recently, however, the Colombian equivalent of the TUC issued a statement of support to brothers and sisters in the UK trade union movement because they can see what is going on here. Conference, just the fact that Colombian trade unionists believe we are under attack graphically illustrates where this Tory government is taking us. They must be stopped. Please support all three motions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference. Ethan Jones, Clwyd South CLP, speaking in support of all the motions. I'm going to start off by speaking briefly about Sweden. I know we're not in Sweden, but I thought I'd start with them. In Sweden, they don't have a minimum wage, and that is a testament to the cooperation and the good partnership between trade unions, businesses, and the understanding from government. Unfortunately, here in the UK, we have the Tories who don't understand that principle of cooperation and partnership, which is why it is absolutely necessary that we have brought in the minimum wage legislation in the last Labour government. I think it is essential that we have to enhance workers' rights, not strip them. And as was said aptly earlier on, unfortunately, the Tories seem to be making time for stripping away rights and not time for supporting them. It's in the UK now and in Wales, I think that we need to start looking at what we can do to stop this erosion of trade union rights. We need to promote collective and sectoral bargaining, which is going to be an absolute must if we're going to bring Wales up to that parity in pay and benefits that Gordon Brown spoke about earlier. We're going to have to reverse all the anti-union legislation in the next UK government, and until that time, we're going to have to do everything that we can in Wales, using all of our power to fight back against that, as we have already done as much as possible against the Trade Union Act 2016. I'm going to finish off with a little quote from Billy Bragg, which is, "Never cross a picket line." Thank you.
Always welcome Billy Bragg references. Next delegate to speak.
Chair, Conference, Anthony Clayton, Political Officer for the CW, North Wales and the Marches Branch, rising in support of Motion 14 on behalf of my union. This is my first time speaking at Conference. If you do see any smoke up here, it's just my Fitbit trying to keep up with my heart rate. There's no fire. As a postal worker, I've taken 18 days of strike action, not just for a fair pay rise, not just to protect hard-fought terms and conditions and the creation of a two-tier workforce, but also to protect the universal service obligation that guarantees a 6-day-a-week letter service to every address in the UK for a standard price. Striking isn't fun. I'd honestly rather be paid to do the job I love. But that job wouldn't exist had we not fought back against the Dickensian plans of Royal Mail. They have tried every dirty trick in the book to try and break our resolve. Members and reps suspended on spurious charges and what can only be described as gaslighting on social media and in the press. But we smashed the anti-trade union ballot rules twice, most recently with a 95.9% yes vote in our recent reballot. Our dispute hasn't finished. It continues. But like the Tories, Royal Mail don't understand the power of the union. General Secretary Dave Ward may wield the power of the CW, but it is the unity and solidarity of our members that is the power in the union. When they attack a union, they attack us all. I want to take this opportunity to thank Labor councillors, Senate members, MPs and activists who have stood with us on our picket lines. I want to thank comrades in the UCU, FBU, NEU, RMT, Unite, Unison, ASLEAF, and many, many others who have all shown solidarity with us as we show solidarity with them. My grandfather came into the UK after World War II. He was 12 years old when the Nazis invaded and lived under occupation and imprisonment for 6 years. Unable to return to his home because of Stalin's purges, he was given refuge here. He rebuilt his life. Oddly enough, he became a postal worker. He was a proud socialist, and I am proud to follow in his footsteps. I want to express my thanks and solidarity to Gary Lineker and all who take a stand against the voices of hate and division. Withdrawing your Labour is a fundamental democratic right and one which the Labour Party and Labour movement must campaign to defend. Welsh Labour can, is and should be at the forefront of this campaign with the social partnership legislation and fair work policies. Please support motion 14 and the other motions in this section. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague, and sending our support to you in the action that you're taking. The two gentlemen there and in the centre there. Sorry, I'm partially blind looking into the sun here, so if I don't describe you very effectively, then I'd struggle to recognise my own mum. So the joy of spotlights. Thank you, Delegate. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Conference. I'd just like to say a couple of things before I start. During 2020, I lost my mum during the height of the pandemic, and whilst we were obeying all the rules, there was all sorts going on in Westminster, and whilst that was going on, Mark Drakeford was dad to the whole Welsh people. And I'd just like to say thank you. My name's Elliot Penn. I'm a Vale of Glamorgan councillor, Penarth Town councillor, and Cardiff South and Penarth delegate. I'm here with Ewan Goodjohn, who I think is the youngest councillor in Wales or possibly the UK. And here with Liz Burnett, brilliant leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council. I'd like to speak in support of all these motions, but a bit more broadly. We have a massive opportunity in Wales to build a truly sustainable green economy, to build housing sustainably incorporating green technologies, making them fit for the future, affordable and more affordable to run. We have an abundance of natural resources in Wales, lots of rain, lots of wind, lots of water, and lots of snow at the moment. Along with tidal energy, these need to be properly harnessed, creating renewable green energy, benefiting the people of Wales and not a majority of shareholders. We need sustainable jobs created in green technologies. We need proper apprenticeships which pay. We need proper apprenticeships which pay a living wage whilst training. Apprenticeships for all ages, not just school leavers and young people. Many older workers who dropped out of employment during the pandemic still want to work, but in different sectors, but without the means or resources to retrain. Workers with vast accumulated knowledge and transferable skills. We also have a huge skills shortage in the UK and Wales. As a simple builder, I see this firsthand, a simple builder who's a member of a trade union. We need tradespeople and skilled workers in all sectors. We need to value tradespeople the same way they do in Europe. We need to be part of Europe, but that's another conversation, and a conversation we should be having, I think. We need to value tradespeople the same way they do in Europe, where the carpenter, plumber, electrician, skilled worker and labourer are seen and held in high regard. A building site cannot function without skilled labour. Skilled labour trained in new, green and traditional technologies. Jobs and workers protected properly. Workers protected properly. Jobs and workers not exploited. We need to make our economy fit for the future. We need to invest in a new workforce. We need to make our economy sustainable. Thank you, Conference. I'd like to support all these motions. Thank you.
Conference. Chair. John Toner, Unite Delegates speaking in support of Cannon Valley CLP's Right to Strike Motion 13. James Larkin, the Irish trade unionist, once said, "Those who want to divide the workers will resort to the foulest methods." We have come to expect nothing less from the Tories. For decades, they have shown nothing less and shown us over and over again their intent to break and remove workers' rights and trade unions' rights and lessen the strength of ordinary working people. The haste with which the UK Tory government has moved to push through legislation in regards to workers' rights, or lack of workers' rights as well, and the right to strike is of no surprise. What may have surprised them is the fact of the strength and conviction of the working people standing up against those changes to their rights. Conference, respect for the freedom of association and the right to strike is a fundamental and unavoidable essential characteristic of the International Labour Organization. The ILO principles concerning the right to strike from the early days of the ILO Committee on the Freedom of Association declared strike action to be the basic principle underlining the rights from which all others, labour rights to some extent, derive, and which recognise the right to strike to be one of the principles by which workers and their trade unions may legitimately promote and defend their economic and social interests and protect their working terms and conditions. Therefore, Conference, I simply say, further draconian restrictions will only drag the UK further away from the democratic norms of a civilised society. Conference, exercising the right when negotiations break down must be a fundamental principle and right for all trade unions to enjoy. Let me say, strikes are not the will or the fault of trade unions per se. They are the aspirations for ordinary working people to protect their standard of living and their terms and conditions of employment. Strikes are a system of a broken economy, broken and bankrupt Tory government, lacking basic skills of negotiations and unable to govern with ideas and principles of a better and fairer society. The UK government intends to pass new laws imposing minimum levels, even after the trade unions have jumped the hurdles of the restrictive legislations imposed by this inept and inadequate Tory government. Conference, don't forget the values of the Welsh Labour government have benefited the trade union labour movement and protected workers constantly. How the Welsh government fought tirelessly to protect Wales and its working people from the full impacts of the rigours of the 2016 Trade Union Act. And Conference, in conclusion, this Tory government has no mandate for further curbs on the right to strike or trade union legislation. And should they impose these harsh and unreasonable measures, Conference welcomes the next UK Labour government confirmation to repeal these restrictive laws. Thank you, Conference.
Pnawn da eto. Rebecca Fogarty, delegate from Gower CLP. I'm fully in support of the motions ahead of us this afternoon, but I rise not to speak about the horrendous Tory legislation that seeks to restrict the right to strike, but another horrendous piece of Tory legislation, the retained EU law bill. The acronym is REUL. It's pronounced rule, as in one rule for them, another for the rest of us. This bill is dangerous. It is an affront to parliamentary democracy, and it is not wanted by anyone except a tiny minority of Tory ministers. And I rise to speak about it as part of this debate because it threatens to undermine workers' rights that have been hard fought for over decades. A selection include the right to paid annual leave, the maximum 48-hour week and rest breaks, equal pay. The charity Pregnant Then Screwed have described the bill as a reversal in women's rights, parental paid leave and the right to be free from discrimination, health and safety at work, including in construction, which has led the chair of the British Safety Council to condemn the bill, concerned by the possible rise in the number of deaths at work. We don't even know whether this list is complete because there are key pieces of legislation missing from the government's own rule dashboard. Clause 15 of the bill will allow any minister, single, to revoke or replace secondary rule as they consider to be appropriate and to achieve same or similar objectives. It appears to be completely at the whim of an individual Tory minister in Westminster. So it is with good reasons that unions are opposed to the bill. Various and many other institutions, bodies, agencies, from the Chartered Institute of Building to the National Trust are opposed to the bill. And I'm proud to say our MPs in Westminster are opposed to this bill. But it is incumbent on every single one of us in this room, every member out there across Wales, to be clear with our communities about the possible impact of this piece of legislation that the Tories are seeking to force upon us. And therefore I rise to ask you all to ensure that more is being spoken about with regards to this bill, more is being spoken about with the risk to workers' rights and beyond, so that we can be sure that our communities are as opposed to this bill as we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'd now like to call on Mick Anthony to close the debate. Thanks, Mick.
Thank you. Conference, comrades, it's been a great honour to actually listen to the solidarity and the passion in this conference, our relationship and our solidarity with our trade union movement, which is the heart and soul of our Labour movement and the Labour Party in Wales. I'm particularly proud to be able to speak on this motion because it's in Wales where the right to strike was really established. And it was in my constituency of Pontypridd in 1900 when railway workers, complaining and arguing against the terms and conditions that they had, came out on strike. They were taken by the bosses all the way to the House of Lords. And the House of Lords, in its normal class interest, voted to make trade unions liable for the financial costs of industrial action, something which would have destroyed the trade union movement and prevented it from being able to work. It was called the Taff Vale Judgment that was referred. But what it did do was it led to the 1906 Trade Dispute Act. Trade unions got together, they got organised, realised there was a need for a strong political voice, and it led to the development, the growth and the formation of the Labour Party, and that is why we are here today. What the bill is doing, what the Tories are doing, is not only attacking in all sorts of legislation the right to protest, various civil rights, various freedoms, the attacks on democracy itself in terms of restrictions on voting, but this is a fundamental attack on fundamental freedoms. If you look around the world, you look at countries that some are more democratic than others, some are totalitarian, you can judge the quality of democracy in any country by looking at the scale of freedom and activity of the trade unions within those countries, the abilities of working people to be able to organise. The less freedom there is, the more totalitarian and authoritarian the government is. And we have in Westminster a government that is not only authoritarian, but is becoming increasingly totalitarian. Let me just say about the minimal service, the strikes minimum service levels bill, or give it its true name, the Sack the Workers bill, the sack the ambulancemen, the sack the nurses, the sack anyone who dares to stand up for their rights in our society. What I can say in respect of Welsh Government is this. Welsh Government will not be recommending to the Senedd that consent be given to this legislation. This legislation undermines the work we've been doing on social partnership. It undermines the social partnership bill that we have, which will, for the first time in the UK, will put trade unions, businesses and government on a statutory footing, a historic step being developed in Wales. And I believe it's because that represents and reflects our history and our solidarity as a labour movement in Wales. I believe it will also potentially be against international law, against human rights law, and against the conventions of the International Labour Organization. So, comrades, colleagues, please support these various votes. Support very much what was said about rule, about the attacks that are taking place. But I'm so proud to see the level of solidarity that is here in Wales, which is the heart and soul of the Welsh Labour Party and the Welsh Labour movement. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Mick. I'll now take the vote on motion 12. The recommendation is to vote for this motion. Can I take a show of hands in favour? And a show of hands against? That's carried unanimously. Motion 13, again, the recommendation is to vote for this motion. Show of hands in favour? And a show of hands against? That's carried unanimously too. And motion 14, the recommendation is for this. In favour? And against? And thank you for that excellent show of solidarity. With unanimous votes for those shows real the strength of feeling and solidarity in this room to all of those who are struggling against an anti-union government at the moment, and for the rights and the welfare of the people that the trade unions represent and who provide such vital services in our communities. That point of unity brings conference to a close today. I'd like to thank Joe and all the Welsh Labour staff for the work that goes into organising conference. I'd like to thank you for your patience for me as I've tried to bring in as many speakers and keep us to time as much as possible. And also thanks to Deb Davis, who chaired yesterday afternoon session. I'd like to thank the venue staff once again for doing an amazing job hosting us this weekend. And also to the town of Llandudno for their hospitality for us too. Can I please ask you to return your headsets to the translations desk, and please take any rubbish with you as you leave. There are recycling bins around the venue. I wish you all a safe journey home, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you on the doors out campaigning, hopefully for a Labour government as soon as possible. Take care all.
Just get the...